Good morning, everyone.
Here we are, Mitch. Here we are. Welcome to the Edge Report live on Earth Day 2026. Thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me. This was great. A great message to receive yesterday.
Yeah, you bet. Well, it's Earth Day. We got to talk about things like planetary boundaries, and I see your hat. Symbiosis will come up. Um,
Yeah.
Tell the world a little bit about Mitch. There's a lot there to unpack. So, however you feel like sharing today.
Okay. I am an Earth system scientist and regenerative homesteader and co-founder and CEO of Landscope, which helps people work with Earth and not on top of it. And all of this comes from background in geography and permaculture design.
Yes, it
It's
does.
very earthly.
Yeah, well, you've been on the show a couple of times, and one of the things that stuck with me is, look your perspective, looking out the window and seeing the Earth, having an earthly perspective. So, because it's Earth Day, and because you agreed to do that, that's kind of how I want to frame the conversation today: is having an earthly perspective and how much awareness. I always like to say that I think that there's a linear connection between being awake and then being aware and then being conscious, right?
Mhm.
And I think that earthly perspective automatically puts us into an awareness mode. So let's kind of stick with that awareness theme today, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you drive the Earth spaceship.
Well, yeah. The Artemis picture that I put up there, I thought was really cool because, globalism, the concept of globalism in my research of technology, really started with Whole Earth Magazine and the work of Stuart Brand and the Merry Pranksters out in Silicon Valley back in the 60s. And it's pretty interesting to think that we didn't even have a perspective of the Earth
Uh-huh.
until the late 1960s. And, this recent um, Orion mission, Artemis 2, going to the back side of the moon, literally the dark side of the moon, and coming out on the other side and seeing brand new pictures and having a new perspective. I think that gives us some authority now to have a new lens on our Earth perspective. So, what a fascinating time to have that happen. And then here we are on the 22nd of April on Earth Day talking about having an earthly perspective.
Yeah, I think I don't know, they talk about it a lot, the astronauts and even the ones that are just in space. Just like you get up there and you see that everything is connected and it is a very fragile shell, and you can actually see how thin the atmosphere is. This little bitty bit of blue that is just the only thing between us and a void of hostile space. But we treat it like it's infinite because it's all we can see, right? And it's having that shift in perspective is super important, I think. And like go back to the idea of globalism is like we are a global species in a lot of senses, but we've lost the our brains aren't programmed to understand that what happens here, this rain garden, can actually have rippling effects downstream, let alone in the whole world. Like it's just too much to compute. Like we are primates who need to be collecting seeds and nuts and berries out in the forest. Like that's about the extent of our um, rational thoughts in a lot of ways. So there's a lot to balance. It's overwhelming.
Well, it's overwhelming, but one of the things that I love to I'll point out to these folks is that you live in Winfield, Alberta, Canada, right? On a homestead, so your hands are dirty, your feet are tired, your hands are tired, but you're full every day because you're not only sort of providing lidar based, non GIS based landscape products in your daily business, working with the layers, and thinking about that sort of thing. But you're out there doing it. You're a working practitioner, and that's one of the things that I posted here on LinkedIn. You were a cheese retailer, you were a farmer, you were a got junk driver. The Mitch of many, and that to me is amazing that you have chosen to live in a fairly remote part of the world,
Mm-hmm.
raise your daughter on a beautiful piece of land and be an actual steward and practitioner of the earth. So let's talk about that a little bit. Frame for these folks like you're daily. You're just thawing out up there.
Yeah, so right now we're literally just thawing out to see, like, there's still snow on the ground here. Um, the last 2 days have been the nice days of, it's like, oh, all right, spring's coming, cool. Like, we don't need to hole up in this shell of a house anymore. So in the winter, and it's very seasonal. So in the winter, our chores are effectively reduced to plowing the driveway if it needs plowing, and giving the chickens food and water, and collecting eggs. So those are our winter chores. So it's, in a lot of senses, it's like, oh, we get a little break, which is, I think, is really important actually, because our summers are so short and so intense. It's almost 20 to 7 in the morning here, and the sun is coming up. So it's only April. The equinox was a month ago. So in the summertime, like, the sun doesn't go actually down until, I don't know, close to 11:30. So when there's, make hay while the sun shines, right? So
Right.
it's busy. Like, summers are really intense. And so in the summertime, it's going to be very different this year, because it'll be our first full summer with a little human that can crawl.
It will be.
We don't know what the summer's going to be like. We're planning to have a smaller garden for sure, but it depends on the day. We have to go move the chickens. My dad and I built this. I don't want to call it a chicken tank, because it's absolutely huge. It's like more of a chicken tank. Sorry, not a chicken tractor. It's more of a chicken tank. So depending on the day, we might have to move them. We circulate them through our orchard system, and so they're picking up all the dandelions and getting into the grass and eating bugs and eating mice and doing fun chicken things. And then it's just going to the garden, mulching, weeding, getting stuff done. I've got a project over here I really need to finish, the rain garden, which is my rainwater tank is right here, so we're harvesting rainwater off the roof. The overflow of that is going through the swale system that all cascades through a food forest, a polyculture of different fruit trees, and then ends up in a pond. And then when that overflows, it goes into a smaller or bigger basin just down there. So there's just you just look around, it's like, oh, look at all the stuff we have to do. I'm never bored.
That's your work, and one of the things that I see so much, especially on LinkedIn with the professional knowledge work crew, is that growth mindset and time relationship with time are all very different. You are very much on a rhythmic time
Mm-hmm.
where it doesn't matter that it's 10:30 at night in July. It matters that you're not quite finished, and that July 18th is only one day. So you have to keep working until you're done, and that that in that rhythm, in that ecological rhythm, so to speak, or earth rhythm, you can't do that type of work in December.
Mm-hmm.
So, it has to just be done. And that's the emergence growth mindset, and your relationship with time have become probably very different and more planetary and more seasonal than what your wristwatch says based on whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, the time has become shorter and longer all at the same time. We have less of it, but my relationship with it, at least in the last 5 years, has become, I'd say, less immediate, because it's stretched out. Like, I'm watching these trees grow that we planted. I'm seeing the effects of ecological succession that I've had a part in, which it takes a long time.
yeah.
And it's not, you know, you will overestimate what you can do in 1 year and underestimate what you can do in 10.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
I think that's a Bill Gates one.
Well, whoever said it, it's true, and nothing can prove to you quicker or humble you quicker than the land.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know from my personal experience, I got a grant from the ACF, the American Chestnut Foundation, to help bring back a hybridized American chestnut to the Southeast, and I decided that I was going to do about a 15-acre silvopasture project this year at our farm. We already had ancient heirloom apples in this one area, and it was kind of a heady slope aspect. Was a little weird. So I was like, man, this would make for a perfect silvopasture in 30 years. So
Yeah.
I approached the ACF, and we got 34 American chestnuts. And in my mind, in one day, I was going to drive up from here to Shenandoah Valley. A 6-hour drive. I was going to pick up these lifted root American chestnuts and drive them back. In the morning, I was going to lay out and poke 34 holes and plant 34 trees, and then I was going to drive back to the city. And I damn near did it. But planting 34 trees is a hopeful proposition, and of
Mm-hmm.
course, not thinking about the fact that the deer will hammer them, and now needing to cage them because
Yeah.
their buds are tender and juicy and
And
sweet.
tasty.
So yeah, so it does it humbles you pretty quickly. The work is never done. Um, and yet you have to settle into that anxiety and be okay with the fact that our line, at least at our property, is you can't finish the farm.
Yeah. It's just always work to do. And there's always things to learn. And you got to be okay with that. Because when we moved out here, we had no gardening experience whatsoever. I'd done landscape construction and had volunteered on some farms, but that was mostly just weeding and harvesting for market. It wasn't actually setting the beds up. It wasn't, planning it out. And Maddie does a lot of that. She's a garden wizard. But you got to be okay with failure,
Yeah, and
or
so much.
reframing it to be learning.
Yeah, right. It exactly. It really isn't failure, and that's why I think that the ultimate two entrepreneurial paths in life are to be an artist or to be a farmer. I think there's nothing um, more risky slash learn slash move forward pivot. You just don't get into art or farming to reap the financial benefits and the windfall of vacation homes and travel, at all. But you're
Yeah.
going to live a life of learning, and you're going to live a life of failure, and you're going to live a full life.
I think that both of those things, because I like art and I like gardening, have been some of the most helpful things in my entrepreneurial journey, because it's, just try again. Like, you need to look like, oh, this isn't working. Doesn't mean that it's a failure. It just means you need to try something different. But you need to go down that path at least enough to be able to look back and connect the dots and say, okay, that's not working. You need to try something different. And to exercise patience in that, right? It's
Yeah.
and just
And you don't
going steadfast.
when you have your own land too, you don't you make a lot of mistakes, even ecologically, right? You bring things out onto the farm or the homestead that maybe you didn't think through.
Mm-hmm.
We're seeing a lot of that with contaminated contaminated inputs that are even organic, but they're
Yeah.
contaminated inputs that are full of PFAS or microplastics or whatever that are really messing up and causing an impact to organic certification or what have you down here in the U.S. And you make those mistakes. You want to make those mistakes small.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to bring some bags of some things in. It's not okay to bring truckloads of some things in. So you learn pretty quickly, like, oh, okay, well, I can't really trust inputs that are not from here. So now I probably need to start thinking about the chemistry and biology of composting here so that I
Yeah.
know exactly where everything came from, right? Origin and validation,
Oh,
chain of
100%.
custody, like it's so important.
but you don't, you're so blind to it until you're actually presented with the situation. It's like, okay, I need an input. Like this stuff
Yeah.
doesn't just grow right out of the ground. Like I need some sort of medium or supplement here.
Yep.
Um, and compost takes time to build.
Yeah. So you got to, and that's just it. That's the relationship with time that I talk about. Nature emergence and planetary time can be extremely immediate. In one of my talks that I do about Hudson Commons for pathway communities coming out of Hurricane Helene, there's a short video clip in there. In an hour and a half, this woman that we interview, she lost everything. She was in a nasty part of the storm that had some vertical shear winds that just literally, she lost everything. In an hour and a half, she went from completely forested to one tree.
Oh my goodness.
So nature can be super, super fast, but that storm had been brewing. We knew it was coming for, days and days and days. So it was, in many ways, it was very slow, but the impact that it had was in an hour and a half immediate.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just devastating. But yeah,
It happens,
it
and you have,
happens.
those are the setbacks that you have. It just is what it is. And at the same time, as a result, ecologically, there's now a new form of emergence, right? So that forest floor is bare. Things aren't fighting for the sun as much as they were.
Hmm.
You'll have a bramble return, right? The deer will come back. It'll all be okay. It just won't be okay in what we think is the appropriate amount of time. It's not going to be this quarter. It's not going to be next year. It's going to take some time.
Yeah, I mean, not as devastating. Um, but last year we had an emergence of tent caterpillars. It was insane. By like usually in looking at the window here, I can't remember the exact timing of it, but end of May, everything is green. But last year, you could be going for walks and you could literally just hear just some sort of, it sounded like it was raining, but it would be blue skies, nice and warm. But you could just hear this on the ground. And it was like, what is this noise? Like, what is happening? A couple weeks later, all of these tent caterpillars, I mean, billions, like enough that they would be going across the highway and you could see these little slicks where they were being run over, and the highway was actually getting slippery because it was just tent
Wild.
caterpillars everywhere, and every tree was just stripped bare.
Yeah.
This happens every 13, 15 years.
Yep.
At the time, it seems like it's devastating. There's so many people like, oh, we got to kill them all. It's like, why? And it's a paradigm thing, right? But it's like, this is natural. Um,
Yeah.
and I couldn't help but be thinking, like, what good is this doing?
Yeah.
And all the new light hitting the forest floor, you could literally see the growth, all the grasses, everything else was like, oh, I can have a chance to actually, build my roots here and grow up. And then all those tent caterpillars or moths are going to be food
Mm-hmm.
for something.
Right.
Like there are rippling cascades that are good.
Was there an intervention, a human intervention? Did it get to the point where people felt like they needed to broadcast aerial some sort of chemical solution to that, or were you?
Some people at the local scale were like, oh yeah, we need to spray them. It's like, there's no point. There's literally billions of them.
Right.
Like it's not going to do anything.
Yeah, we had a similar issue here, and it's funny that you say that. Now we had cankerworms, so a form of tent caterpillars for sure, doing the same thing, where we had to ban trees and literally skirt a tree, mostly old growth oaks and hardwoods, because that was kind of their preference of diet was
Mm-hmm.
whatever the composition of those leaves were. And we got to the point where they did aerial spray the city. We have yeah, nuts, right? And I look back on that now, and it's probably been 15 years. Of course, they've moved on. Like,
Yeah.
there's no one's no one's banding trees anymore. There's no like conquer the canker campaigns. We're not spending millions of dollars on aerial broadcast to eradicate these things. They've just sort of maybe we gave them to you. They just probably moved on.
Migrated. Oh, we'll go somewhere where we're not going to get sprayed.
Yeah, so I don't know that we solved the problem, but they're certainly gone. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Well,
let's
they might
shift
come
gears.
back.
I want to know more about Symbiosis. You're wearing the hat. I've been a fan of those guys in Texas and watching what they've been doing, and it didn't surprise me that there was a casual collision between you and those guys. So I wanna hear about that. You and I haven't caught up since that.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been supplying Symbiosis with maps for their projects for more than a year now,
Awesome.
and they were a um, big influence on how we are rolling things out. So our credit based system that we had, we're not going to graduate from that, but that was to cater to their needs. I was like, because they were basically our best customers. Like, hey, you guys are our best customer. What do you need? How is this going to work for you, right? And so we settled on that, and that's like they were big supporters even when it was just a Google Earth Pro package, and even then that was a huge leg up for them. And about a month and a bit ago, I was in San Antonio for the National Land Conference, and Symbiosis HQ is in Wimberley, so between San Antonio and Austin, a little bit off the highway. And my friend and we were staying in Austin. It's like, well, I need to go say hi to Michael and the team. So I went to Wimberley, spent a day out there, got lunch with the crew. We filmed some videos. I actually got to hang out with my best customer and friends, like in person.
Yeah.
And it was unreal. And I just, in a lot of ways, Landscope was built for a team like that, doing bigger projects at a high volume and just operating with less than ideal geospatial information.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, great.
I was a match made in heaven, and it's so funny because I'm obviously a Landscope user, and I'm also a proponent of the product, but I'm also a Mitch fan. But I watch Symbiosis on YouTube all the time because they're proving that it can be done differently, and they're solving problems in an arid location that people heretofore didn't believe could be solved. So it's like, oh no, like you watch what these guys are doing. So for anyone that doesn't know, I think they're only on YouTube, right? Go to Symbiosis channel on YouTube and check out their content. What they're doing is nothing short of amazing.
That's incredible. And their content is just so inspiring and educational. It's top notch, top tier regenerative content. It's like this is what we're doing, but the how and why we are doing it too, which is so important because I think the issue that we're having is very much a messaging issue where the solutions aren't laid out very concretely. And of course, context really, really matters, where you are and how you do things. But they do a very good job of acknowledging that and just saying, this is, in this particular context, this is what we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we are doing it, which I think is really important too. It's just like people want to do this. They don't know how. They know the why, they know the what, but there's the how only comes from doing the hard yards outside. And Michael and the team have a lot of experience, so they are sharing that freely, which is amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the metaphors are everywhere. It's like, this Earth is what 4.67 billion years old. And there's natural technology that has happened over that period of time. No matter what your scientific belief or religious belief is, there is Earth technology. And so many times as humans, we human engineer things into the harder of two solutions. And, one of the things that I love about the tool, the why of Landscope and what it can do for you and the work that Symbiosis is doing is because so much of it can be easier. Like, it
Uh-huh.
doesn't have to be hard. Their hard work always has to happen. Don't get me wrong. But if you do it in the wrong way or in the wrong place, the work becomes infinitely harder in perpetuity. And it's like, that's the perspective shift, like the word aspect, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
what is your aspect? Like, what is your perspective? Going back to our throughput for, having a planetary perspective or an Earth perspective. You can be doing it wrong because it's simply facing the wrong direction.
Yeah. And that comes down to fundamental physics.
Yeah, and it's yes, Sonny, yes, whatever, yes, all the things that, like, yes, what you thought was right, sure, all of that probably is partially right. However, the one part that's very wrong is the way in which it's facing. And we see that in PV, right? Photovoltaics is probably the easiest thing to sort of point to and be like, no, it has to point in this direction at this angle because it's going to benefit from the sun for the longest period, and therefore you're going to get the maximum
Yeah.
input of solar energy,
Yeah.
right? But you don't think of that through the lens of photosynthesis of a leaf facing the wrong direction.
Which is mind-boggling.
Right? Right?
It's like, oh, you don't?
But you don't, do
Yeah.
you? I mean, like, I know for us, at our farm, there's a million things that you think about, but then the one or two that you don't think about are often the ones that have like the biggest, like, oh shit. And it
Yeah.
takes people like you to come visit, or some, it takes innovation happens at the edge, right? So someone comes in and the question is always simple. You're standing there trying to solve this massive problem. You've got all this human engineering involved, and you've got tools and supplies and whatever you have. And someone will just be like, why didn't you put it over there?
Yeah. Yeah.
And you
It's
go, oh
oh
fuck.
yeah.
Right? And it's because you decided that was the right place, and then you added your humanness to it, and humility gets in the way, and you just don't see that perspective, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is you get attached to the idea of an outcome. It's like, no, this has to be the spot. It's like, does this want to be the spot? And that's the first question. Like, what are you putting there? Does that want that to be the spot? And that really
And
just goes down back to a basic needs and yields analysis. Like, all right, what does this thing need? Whether it be a chicken, tomato
right,
plant,
tree, it
a
doesn't matter.
tree, doesn't
Yeah,
matter. It's like,
water.
what does it need?
Yeah.
Will that be provided here?
Yeah. And one of the things I think that's crazy about my journey into regenerative ag is, it usually always starts with nutritional density. So let's
Uh-huh.
just say it's food, right? It Almost every regenerative ag person is going to say, I'm going to harm the earth less. I'm going to depend on inputs less. Sure. And I'm going to be a steward to the land and all the things, right? Yes, all of that. But the reason that they're generally doing it is because they want nutritionally dense food. And in a caloric high, ultra processed food world that we live in, very few people are even thinking about nutritional density. So
Uh-huh.
they're in the industrialized ag world, they're thinking about yield, and they're thinking about, the perfect look, because fickle consumers at the grocery store won't buy a tomato with a pockmark on it. But, no one realizes that tomato has maybe zero nutritional value. It's got a little, but, nothing in comparison to what's grown over here that is clearly ugly and has pockmarks all over it. But it doesn't matter because, this tomato is 14 of those tomatoes.
Yes. Yeah, but that I think is missing a lot it's just not taught. Like the education system is not doing that justice, and we're doing a disservice to next generation by not talking about that more. And I think while you were talking about that, I think it's very much just had this weird association with business and entrepreneurship. Is like I would say like the if nutrient density, and like everyone wants nutrient density, every entrepreneur wants to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
But what comes first is the provision of value on this thing. And on the other side, it's like it's in the right spot and it has the right ingredients to actually provide that nutrient density.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly it. And it doesn't that goes across all forms of permaculture. Even what I've been researching lately is the human energy. We talk so much about electricity and solar and all the energy that it takes to run data centers and you know silicon based life forms now, right? The human energy, calories and joules, those two units of measure, when you get away from the industrialized food system and you think about natural human energy, the human energy generally tends to prove that you can get a higher nutritional value of yield
Mhm.
versus the industrialized version. And there's a direct correlation there that in my mind I'm still trying to tie together, where small local producers who rely on inputs less and industrialized ag processes less, they're human and thereby maybe call it lazy. So they're using all of the energy of the earth as a tailwind to propel them through. So that all that natural energy that goes into their production model ends up creating a higher yield nutrition.
Yeah,
It's
and
weird.
that nutrient density, it's there. It needs to be cultivated in a lot of senses, or at least worked with, i.e., not stripped to its bones, and removal of the microbes that actually make that conveyance of nutrients from the soil to the plant viable. But I think, yeah, when I first started getting really into food, I've always been into food, but when I really started getting into talking to farmers and understanding where my food was coming from, I created this soup, and it was just literally the most nutrient dense soup that I could try to make. I was doing my master's. It was like, okay, time is tight. I need to um, make this super soup every Saturday, so I have food for the week. And it was I had this bowl of soup at lunch, and I didn't really need to eat anything until dinner. Like, and it was just a tiny bowl of soup because it was so packed with good shit that I didn't need anything else.
Well, I mean, I think that all of a sudden becomes the antithesis to eat the whole bag, will make more.
Yeah.
So that might be part of it, is that, a lot of the systems require consumption, and the more we consume, the more we have to buy. So, what we may not realize is that our bodies over time have lost that ability to be very in tune with satiation. And, there's a reason why when people come up to the farm and we source our proteins from Stony Knob, my friend Jay's farm, and he's got Highland cattle, and they literally only use grain for candy at the very end to get them to move around. That's
Uh-huh.
it, like handfuls basically. And they're on hundreds and hundreds of acres. When you eat a small piece of that protein, it doesn't take a big slab. It's much more rich. It's got much more flavor. The color is completely different.
It's crazy how, like, I didn't know that there's a local farm near us, Dakota Cohen, and he gave me I bought a pork chop from him, and it was
Mhm.
just like I didn't know pork chops could be that color.
Yep.
I was just
It's
like, wow,
wild,
that
isn't it? And
yeah,
and not only that, but I don't know about the price, but right now what I'm getting when I'm in Southwest Virginia and up near our land, it's far cheaper price per pound for protein that's responsibly sourced that I can see every day than it is at the grocery store. Because I'm insulated now. My wife and I don't buy, very rarely do we buy any protein from the grocery store anymore, because I can support Jay. I just got him a grant for a walk-in, which is awesome. So he's
oh,
had stand-up
beauty.
coolers, and there's a group that's been doing some really cool stuff here. the Resilient Collabs. It's a bioregional investment group, and they started with a bunch of seed grants. And I called him. I'm like, dude, you need to apply for a grant. There's a piece of technology, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's a converter that takes a traditional window air conditioning unit, and it up converts it to a freezer. So
Whoa.
what he's doing is he's taking building a tough shed, insulating the hell out of it with insulated foam, putting an air conditioning system in it, a $300 window unit plus this $400 chip processor, and he's putting PV on top. So he's running the whole thing off grid, and it's a complete walk-in shed.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and he's going to get rid of, he's got like 3 chests and like 4 stand-ups, and all of that stuff can go. And he's going to take the whole process off grid. So no more dependency on
Unreal.
anything. But yeah, right? So I want to talk about planetary boundaries, because we were talking about awake and aware and conscious. And I think a lot of people haven't quite figured out what this whole planetary boundary thing is. So I put a little post on LinkedIn today, and some people may be joining us on LinkedIn now. That was a link to an article about the planetary boundaries. Now there's 9 planetary boundaries, and that we've basically surpassed 7 of the safe operating spaces. I'm going to put an image up here. Do you mind talking about that a little bit, just so that people kind of have a better awareness for what planetary boundaries are and how they came up with this safe operating space plus
I can do my best.
Yeah, just try. I'm going to throw this up here real quick. Let me see if it let's see. There we go. My face should go away. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so these are our planetary boundaries. And biosphere, climate change, novel entities, stratospheric ozone depletion, atmospheric aerosol, ocean acidification, biochemical flows, freshwater change, land system change. When we look at the safe operating spaces inside of that pie, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, so I guess it's 6 out of the 9. We've already moved past the safe operating space. So the one that makes the most sense for us to talk about is probably freshwater, because I think that has the biggest, people understand that we're in a severe drought in the Carolinas right now in the Southeast. But man, look at this. Look at the biosphere integrity. It's a mess. And we started with that thin line around the Earth that we just saw from Artemis. That's our biosphere, man. That's what allows us to do what we're doing right now.
Yeah. I think that I don't know, a lot of people might be looking at this and just like shut down, right? It's like your prefrontal cortex shuts down in the presence of fear. Like fear is literally the mind killer, right? And this image could be scary to a lot of people. So I think the best way to address this, like, what can I actually do about it? Because I think I spent a lot of time myself so worried about charts like this, where it's like, okay, we're doomed. What's the point? But it wasn't until I started really contributing to solutions that I actually had any kernel of hope in the world. And so I think that if anyone's looking at this, being like, oh shit, like what are we actually going to do? What can you do? And which part of which of the 9 is going to actually be a lever for the other things? And that's what needs to be focused on. I think that's freshwater and land system change, because everything else is contingent. All those other things, the integrity of the biosphere is contingent on, not to say that saltwater isn't important and marine environments aren't important, but freshwater change, land system change have levers on every single one of those other ones. So focus on those. Right? And you can, like, someone can actually do that. That's what Symbiosis is doing. They're doing both land system change and freshwater change.
Yep.
So you're changing the response of the Earth to something that could be considered a disaster, like the floods in Texas last year. the land could not respond suitably, or could not respond to that input of rainwater. And it's just a big cycle between floods and droughts. And what their work is doing is appropriately holding water back on the landscape, which is offering both flood and fire resilience, local cooling, and will increase the integrity of that local biosphere. And when you have enough people doing that spread out, then that biosphere integrity will and can come back down to a safe limit.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I think is so fascinating about this planetary boundary map, is that it's always shown in that pie, and it's always shown in different levels of risk and criticality. But what we don't have is a very good grasp on that interrelationship between the 9 divisions. And to your point, there is so much we can do with land and water that can impact some of the other areas. So let's double click on that for a minute. Let's introduce some folks that may not understand the word permaculture and silvopastoral thinking. Like let's pull those weird words out for a second and say, look, like if we just think about things from a permaculture perspective, what does permaculture mean, Mitch?
Permaculture, its base root is permanent agriculture, and it's the setting up of agricultural and human systems. And I think in a lot of ways it doesn't need to be human systems, and a lot of it is anthropocentric, which can be a problem too. But it's very like we are nature working, right? That is the mindset, and we can cultivate an environment through design that both meets our needs and the needs of others and the planet. And it's a design science for abundance. In a lot of ways, what we saw there is very much just siloed thinking. It's like, oh, all these things are different. Like we were just talking about, the connections between them are not acknowledged.
Right? They're literally divided in the map.
Yeah, it's like there are demarcations to say these are separate things.
Yeah,
it's like
this doesn't
they're not
have anything to do with this.
Yeah, they're not separate. They're very intimately connected. And I think one of the if we bring it down to just like the property scale, and this is scalable, like it requires a lot of upfront thinking, 100 hours of thinking for every hour of doing. And in a lot of ways, that's how Landscope was really born. It's like, okay, what are all the things that we would want to consider for a permaculture-based project? Mm-hmm. And this is a Rob Avis quote where it's like, it's not the solar panels, the rain tank, the chicken tractor, the food forest that make the permaculture property a permaculture property. It's how they connect together, right? And it's that level of systems thinking where you can weave these things together and it's in a very fractal way to meet the needs of a system and its inhabitants.
So let's give some very simple, specific examples. Like I'll give one really kind of silly, but not really silly solution that I put in place this year. So I split my time between the city and the woods, and as the director of land management, working on responsible processes up at our family property, I'm constantly thinking in terms of permaculture and silvopastoral thinking, and I just truly believe that I'm only a steward of that property. There is no ownership of it, and it's really just to pass on in perpetuity. So very intentional with all of the thoughts and the processes that are happening on that property. And I come back to the city, and I have an irrigation system and a fescue lawn. And I was like, yeah, I'm part of the problem here. So off went the irrigation system forever, and out came the inoculated clover. and now we have a triple strain of clover, and our yard is it's clover. So we've got a nitrogen fixing solution that no longer needs inputs. We're handling the erosion. It's still green. I don't have to cut it nearly as much, and I never need to water. And
Yeah.
I'm 50. I turned 50 this year. I'm like, man, why didn't I do that like 30 years ago?
Yeah.
Give me
Yep.
some more examples of simple things like that for folks that may not live in a place like Winfield, Alberta, Canada on 100 acres or whatever. Are there some other things that people can think through?
I think that probably at that city level, urban scale, one of the most simple things that one can do is just harvest rainwater. And think about it, my conversions here are going to be a little bit wonky because I speak metric. But let's consider a roof that is, I don't know, 200 meters squared. How many square feet is that? Okay, what's the average? Is that about 2,000 square foot is the average house size?
Yeah, probably 2,000 to 3,000 square feet is probably the average home.
Okay. Well, every millimeter of rain that falls on a 200 square meter roof, I can do that. I'll do the imperial conversion after this, but even 1 millimeter of rain on a 200 square meter roof equates to 200 liters. And 1 millimeter of rain is not that much rain. To inches, that is so small, wouldn't even show up as a fraction. It's like 0.03 inches of rain. Equates to 200 liters of water being harvested. That's 52 gallons, which is not nothing, right?
No, it's not nothing.
So would you extend that 1 millimeter to, I don't know, let's say 10 millimeters? Let's see, what's 10 millimeters to
times
inches?
10 will get us to 500 gallons, right?
Well, let's extend it. Let's even say a 2-inch rain event. That's pretty heavy. So now we go 50 times 200. That's going to be 10,000 liters. So 2,641 gallons of water that is now not being shed off your roof into a gutter onto the street, contributing to downstream flood events, sedimentation in rivers, and you can actually hold that back and use it in a drought situation. In the case that the city's like, oh, we're turning off the sprinklers. And then when you add in a clover lawn, you don't even need to water in the first place. All that water can go into a nice little veggie garden that you can feed your family with, or watering your perennial fruit trees that you planted.
Yeah, and by design, right? So it's simple as starting with that, to your point, of 100 hours of thinking for an hour of implementation. So much of this is incorporated into our pathway communities projects that I'm working on, our residential projects that are really about stable living. Of course, we're putting water mitigation systems and collection systems in because it just makes sense. And it doesn't, at the beginning of a project, really cost any more. So we're also doing a microgrid to PV so that, in the event that we are, and not just for peak load capacity, but for power pair, so that when the power goes down, we still have auxiliary power enough. We also have a community kitchen for resilience, for disaster recovery. In addition to all of that, we're putting in ERVs where our indoor air quality is actually being recycled. So we're building to enclosure standards, building science metrics for net zero energy, but we're also building for indoor air quality. And you just have to keep thinking. And it doesn't necessarily cost any more. It's just good design. It's using the Earth's technology as a tailwind to produce a better living experience that also, by the way, reduces the dependency on the infrastructure that's been put in place to service your needs.
Yeah. Well,
Like,
it's just like applied common sense.
but it's almost that simple
Yeah.
that it's applied common sense. But try explaining that to investors. Try explaining that to folks who like why like I didn't even, why would you do that? Like there's a house down the road that can go up this blah 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 blah. That's just a ribbon cutting market rate event. And it's like, yeah, but that's not, you're not actually changing the system.
Uh-huh.
It goes back, that turns into a whole different uh, rabbit hole of conversation about whether housing is in a supply crisis or it's an economics crisis. And the reality is it's just a living system that needs to be changed.
Uh-huh.
And it's okay if people don't want to participate in that, but the living system, the housing system that we have created is no longer really relevant to the earth that we live in and the times that we're living. So there's our work together. That's why I love what you're doing with Landscope. Helps me because a civil engineer is going to look at that from the civil engineering perspective. The town and city zoning and planning are going to look at it from their perspective. Transportation is going to look at it from their perspective. Code compliance and engineering regs are going to look at it from their perspective. But has anybody really looked at it from a Landscope perspective, like the earthly view out the window? Because our entrance could just be in the wrong place because a design team decided that this was where the entrance was supposed to be.
Yeah, and that's really at the end of the day what the mission is to make sure the land has a seat at the design table.
Yeah, or maybe that's like way, like, to me that's because of our shared experience of conversations that we've had on the Edge Report here and my background, in studying geology. My perspective out the window is similar to yours. I have an earthly perspective. So when I look out of the train window or the car window or the plane window, I'm seeing geomorphology. Most people, I think, Mitch, are seeing, um, potato chip signs, ads. I don't even see that stuff. I try real hard to look past it and
Yeah,
find a
slides. Can I
feature.
look through this, please?
Yeah, it's like, wow, that was in the way of what I was, observing the ditch and
Yeah.
trying to figure out like how they're moving water off this road and like, whatever. And now all of a sudden there's a big sign in front of me. So, well, Mitch, how do people find your work, your Landscope product?
Uh, Either connect with me on LinkedIn, Mitch Rawlyk, Rawlyk, or just go to landscope.earth instead of .com, .earth.
Yeah, landscope.earth. And I'm happy to take people through a demo of our farm too in Southwest Virginia when you were kind of in beta and really kind of launching V1. You were gracious enough to give me access to the application to look at it and use it. Every time I share it with somebody, um, they're like, "Damn, what's this?" Like, where'd this come from? So, I'm a novice, but I can certainly share enough information about like our property and our farm. The water feature is like, that's to me one of the coolest things that there is when you get into, you know, how that works. And my question to you, I can't wait until we can do some subsurface.
Uh-huh.
Once, if it, when and if the science and governments will start to release some of that subsurface water, man, that's going to be cool.
That'd be a massive game changer.
Yeah, and it will be eventually because the technology's out there, right? Like USGS, don't we have like alluvial levels and like don't we have sensing
It
on
needs
that?
to percolate down a little bit.
But we do have it, right? Someone has the ability.
Someone's working on it.
Yeah.
It'd be
Well, if
crazy if they weren't.
if we're doing methane satellites that are floating around in space to uncover areas, hotspots, so to speak, then somebody's got to be doing some subterranean sensing for aquifer levels. But water is about to be the biggest issue, planetary, I think, out
And
there for a
opportunity.
while, and huge opportunity to be prepared for it and create resilient systems around it. Um, But AIDCs, data centers, are not going to stop, and closed loop cooling is part of that. But it takes a tremendous amount of water to do just about anything on this planet, to make food, to produce products, construction industry, agricultural uses. It doesn't matter what it takes. There's always water involved, and 9
Always.
times out of 10, that's fresh water.
Mm-hmm.
So
And yeah,
well, Mitch, thanks, man. It's Earth Day. Thanks for having coffee with me this morning. Your
but
day
my
is just
pleasure.
starting. Where do you start on the homestead today? You gonna feed the chickens, or have you already done that?
Oh no, I haven't fed the chickens yet. So I'll do that. Hang out with my daughter for a while. And then get to work, and then probably just do a bunch of cleanup stuff in the afternoon.
Cool.
Tidy things up a bit.
Thank you for spending an hour with me on Earth Day, and
It's my pleasure.
hopefully some folks enjoyed that. I know I did. So
Likewise, I did.
For selfish purposes, I enjoyed the conversation. I hope someone else did. And look up what Mitch is working on LinkedIn, and especially if you're in the development space or in the land space at all, and have any interest in looking at LiDAR-based GIS informed stuff. It's pretty cool. So
thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you, man. Every day is Earth Day, by the way.
Yeah, right. Let's not take the 22nd of April and have 364 others. Today's Earth Day. So
every day is Earth Day.
Thanks, pal.
Yeah, cheers, man.